I mean, in the spirit of women. But we'll go ahead and start with Meg.
Yeah. Why don't I just jump right in?
Jump right in, please.
In the interest of time, thank you so much to the committees for hearing us this afternoon and allowing us to talk about a pretty important issue, I believe, and one where I believe the legislature has a role in helping us craft both the carrots and sticks that are necessary to change these outcomes. I'm here to talk about gender segregation in blue-collar, high-wage jobs because, as we've noted and has been touched on in the past, while there have been some progress, not enough, but some substantial progress in white-collar jobs and women's access to them. In the blue-collar field, the concentration in the low-wage sector is significant, and in the high-wage, high-skilled job sector that is open in blue-collar work, those that don't require a four-year degree for entry, we still experience a great deal of gender segregation. I myself am a very proud member of IBEW Local 302. I went through an apprenticeship program and I fed my family for more than 25 years. I'm a 37-year union member, so I've been at this a couple of years. And I'm now an advocate and the executive director of Tradeswomen, Inc., and we advocate for women in the trades, both outreach, recruitment, retention, and leadership development. And we are proud to be partnering with the building trades in much of our work as we work hand in hand. But I'm also here to talk a little bit, to lay out the groundwork a little bit about some of the bad news, and then we can pass it to other panelists to talk about successes and challenges and successes, because we have a couple of great other tradeswomen that I'm proud to share this panel with, as well as Cesar. We've talked about apprenticeship as a pathway, and I think it's a pretty good place for us to tackle this issue. It is it is a training ground for high-skilled jobs. It is an earn-while-you-learn strategy, but I think it's really also important to understand that it's a cooperative effort. Employers are important, and that it is a work program with a educational supplement rather than an internship or an educational program which allows you to have work experience. Therefore, it's open to particularly to women who have to support their families, people who don't have the luxury of having someone else support them or their families while they get their education, or they will be going to school nights and working during the days, but you are getting a good salary while you are going forward. It is also the be and end all that is it is being promoted nationally as the key to our next stage of success, opening up to advanced manufacturing, machinists, and other high wage, high skilled jobs, and a way to build our workforce and provide a pathway into the middle class, a way to access all of America's talents, to quote our President Obama. However, unfortunately, I'm here to tell you the sad truth. Apprenticeship is not currently accessing all of America's talents, and it hasn't for a long time. Nationally, the numbers are about 95% men, 5% women. 93%, it varies between 93 and 94. These numbers move slightly, but the picture has been steady for the last 8 years without any change. This isn't a product of the recession. These numbers were there before the recession. Apprenticeship is not really a pathway for women. In the construction trades, it's even tighter. Construction trades nationally and in California run about 2.2% women. So we really have a lot of work to do if we're going to open up this pathway to women. We've seen that women can do physical work. The women who are here and myself fed our families. We can do this work and be respected members of this community, but we really have to focus on how we're going to open and leverage these jobs for the future. I'm going to lay out a little bit more of the facts and also to discuss how women of color...
Okay, I'm going to let you know about another minute, and then we're going to have to go on to some other speakers.
Women of color, there are only 933 women in construction apprenticeship in California currently. There are 45,000 construction apprentices in the entire state. There are 65,000 apprentices in general, because we are working at some other sectors that do have apprenticeship. So that's a sobering number. 933 future construction workers are women in the entire state. But over 70% of these construction women apprentices are women of color. And African Americans and Hispanics are well represented in this group, as well as Asian Pacific Islanders and American Indian groups. They're overrepresented for their population as a whole. So it is a pathway that's open to women of color. They are included. This number is also true for the apprenticeship programs as a whole. This is very tight, but I do want to note that that the other sector that's important in apprenticeship, because we're opening up this in high-wage sectors, not just construction, the largest second sector is public safety, of which we have 9% women apprentices. And the public safety sector is one where women have proven their ability to do physical work, that as an average, maybe around 15%. If you add police, fire, correctional officers, that whole group are women, unlike the 2.2% in the construction industry as a whole. However, personal services dominate the numbers of women in apprenticeship. There are cosmetology and related barber and personal services apprenticeships. They have over 50%. They are 56% female, even though they're only 4% of the apprentices as a whole, and 36% of all female apprentices in California are in this sector. So we see here the segregation, industry segregation is also reflected in apprenticeship, and that we see that women are concentrated in the least well-paid sectors of apprenticeship. I'm going to be happy to share with you written remarks after this. And I do want to say that there are some significant exceptions to the rule. We have here a member of Northern California Operators Local 3. There are almost 10% women in their union and 10% female apprentices. It's a rough number. Sometimes the carpenters overall don't have a great number, but Northern California carpenters have 3 times the numbers of women as their Southern California carpenters. So this is to point out that this is not an area where there can't be success. There can be success, and we just really need to incentivize and focus on the ways to build success. Many of the electrical apprenticeship programs have over 6% female apprentices. There are ways that we can do this better. There is a role for the legislature to help us build the pool of applicants, to increase, as Jennifer Rice touched on, the facility of our workforce investment boards and of our CTE programs to be transparent about their reaching of gender in their funding and their programs. I think it's very important that we keep an eye on what we're doing so that we have a different outcome. Because if we just continue to spend and to regulate apprenticeship in exactly the way that we're doing now, we are not going to change the outcome. We're not going to open this pathway up for women and women of color. And it's important that other women besides myself have the opportunity I had to feed my family. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on.
So my name is Christine Turvalon Garrett, and I am going to be so brief. I entered my apprenticeship about 15 years ago. I served as a painter there and eventually went on to work where I work now, which is at the Building and Construction Trades Council in Alameda County. During my apprenticeship, there were a lot of pitfalls or roadblocks, from small things like bathroom access to generally just having support. So though we are the great equalizer in pay, there are some things internally that we still struggle with, right? And so one of the things that I've noticed in my career arc thus far is that we really need to pay special attention to the programs that are the CTEs and the pre-apprenticeships that are targeting women specifically. So any kind of help or any kind of language that we can embed in grants that say, hey, organizations that are supporting women, you know what? We're going to reward you for that. We're going to support your work. And so basically that's all I have to say. Like, I'll keep it super brief and pass the mic.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Carroll. I am a 29-year member of the Operating Engineers. And 29 years ago, I was given an application. Actually, I was given several applications to apprenticeship programs. I found myself a single mom looking at having to support my children on welfare. Once I went down to the office, I realized this is not going to work for me. So I began working at an insurance company. When that didn't pay the bills, I got a nighttime job at a bar. When those two jobs did not pay the bills, I got a job on the weekend. Finally, my father, who was involved in apprenticeship, came home one night and said, look, we're raising your kids. We raised 7 kids. We love our grandkids, but you need to be accessible for them. It was really a slap to reality that, I was working, not able to meet my bills, and someone else was raising my kids. I love my parents dearly, but that's not what I had planned. So I sat down, I looked at all the applications, and you are right, Miss Jackson. I was going down San Pablo Avenue when I looked up and I saw a female crane operator. And I thought to myself, with what experience I have running a forklift, maybe it might work. So I went home, I filled out the application, and about 2 months later I got a call. And that's where it started. Here I am 29 years later. I was an instructor at our training center for 3 years, and I am currently now an apprentice coordinator. I go out and I look for women, minorities, anything that says I have skills. I find women at McDonald's. I look at, they go, I don't have any skills. Yes, you do. You have math skills. You can make change. In our industry, that's how simple it is. We don't use calculators. We have converted 12 inches to 10/10, and if you can make change, by God, you can set grade. Everything we do is engineered, so that's, how we look at it. And, I go to Lowe's, I go to, Home Depot. If I see somebody and it's a female or a minority running the forklift, I approach them. There are jobs out there for women. 30 years ago, I'm going to tell you, I was told to go home. Don't you hear your children crying? Don't you have dishes that you've left in the sink? Well, I used to go to the blue room, and I'd lock it, and I would cry because I thought, you know what? I need this job. I need to put food and pay my bills. So I figured, you know what? I just have to pretty much dig my heels in and do what I have to do. And the first day that I responded that you can say whatever you want, but by God's, I'm going to be here every Friday to get my paycheck. And every Friday I got my paycheck, and here I am, 29 years later. I'm not saying that the construction industries is a piece of cake. It takes tenacity. It takes willpower. And it takes the desire to know that you are going to get a good wage and you can support your family on that. 29 years ago, I didn't even really look at retirement. But I will tell you this year I can retire with a full pension. So, it's a doable. And it just needs a push.
Thank you. All right.
Batting cleanup.
Batting cleanup.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members.
And of course, I'm sure you'll emphasize it, but with all the challenges and coming from the a labor background myself, I think we get defensive and must remind ourselves we have a long way to go within our unionized trades, but we are so far beyond the non-unionized trades, and we have to give acknowledgement to the few men, but there were some of them who stepped up and said, yes, we need more women in the trades, and we need to continue those things. I hear you loud and clear, but I want to reemphasize the fact that with the lowest numbers that we have, nearly 100% of those women are in a joint labor management apprenticeship program. So we have provided things that are far superior, of course, to the non-union workforce.
And yeah, thank you very much for that. And I think on behalf of the building trades, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity. All of our unions are involved in a proactive outreach that's continued efforts to try to get more women into the building trades. Some of the legislation that you have supported here also encourages more skilled, trained workers that also drives the need for more apprentices to be on public works projects. The incentives for project labor agreements also open up opportunities for local agencies to specifically target communities, minorities, women, emancipated youth, veterans, that sort of thing. That's very important, I think, from a council perspective, because we do present these opportunities in terms of policy to create that policy and drive that need locally so that we can change these numbers and address those needs. I want to thank the Assemblymember Gonzalez for her comments, because the building trades in California have been leading the way in many respects. We started through, previously led by Bob Balgren, now led by Robbie Hunter, the first ever multi-craft Women in the Building Trades Conference. Started with 200 participants in partnership with Tradeswomen Inc. as well. And now, last year, 1,100 participants attended. And we're talking about not only women from across the country, we're talking from Australia, Ireland, Canada, South Africa, all over the world where there is a need. They've heard about this conference and they come. And I tell you, it's one of the most powerful conferences that I've ever attended. I attended many conferences as a union lobbyist, but when I walked into that room the first time, I felt the sisterhood. I felt the power. I felt how much everyone was going to need each other and to help each other out, right? And share their stories, not only to help out through the trade and come up and become apprentices and journey persons, helping out the pre-apprentices as well, and then also dealing with the other aspects of just, society, taking care of the kids, dealing with sexual harassment on the job site, drug abuse issues. It's like it looks at the entire person as a whole. I know you have attended in the past, and I would encourage you to attend next year as well, or the following year when it comes back to California, because it's actually national now. So it's going to a different state, unfortunately. But the building trades have individually have also women's conferences where they target. The Teamsters have one, IBEW has one. They also have a minority caucus as well, where they're driving more people of color. And I just want to say something which is lacking in the analysis and mentioned by a lot of the folks here about career technical education. It's not only access to career technical education and who gets shifted and what, but it's the evaluation of blue-collar work. And the fact that several decades of policies here have driven more people to a one-size-fits-all solution, basically, for what is considered a definition of success, right? And so that comes at a cost. It comes at a cost of taking time out of the day for career technical education courses that are considered electives. It comes at basically what it looks like to be successful. And when a person either graduates or doesn't graduate from high school with that perception, it's very hard for us then to go in and say, hey, here's an opportunity in a non-traditional type industry for construction. So I ask you, because while there has been advances and it has been a lot of progress with funding for career technical education, a couple of years ago, 47,000 slots were given up basically for career tech. We don't have the industrial technology teachers coming up the pipeline at the CSU anymore. In fact, we heard that only one teacher in the entire CSU system wants to be an industrial tech teacher. Why? Because these programs are gone. They don't exist in our high schools anymore. And there's several factors and several pressures that come about with that, but some of it is the balance of trying to deal with the A through G curriculum and ensuring that students are prepared for the CSU and the UC system, which basically they combine their two eligibility requirements. So as you're looking to address a lot of these needs, we ask you to look at that as well. I know that Speaker Atkins made some comments here too, but she also had a piece of legislation, AB 554 in 2011, that basically said that any funding for workforce investment door dollars that were tied to apprenticeship, so basically anything that was going to be tied to an apprenticeable occupation in construction, because back then we had a lot of funding from the stimulus package, they were going to create new training programs instead of partnering with the existing apprenticeship programs that have basically graduate people and lead to a rewarding career in construction in the unionized construction field, where they're paying great wages, they have health care, which is the best health care in the private sector, and we still have a defined benefit pension plan so that people can retire with dignity in the private sector, and that no longer exists. So we definitely thank you for your time and want to work with all of you in the upcoming legislative session to address these issues.
Thank you, and a very special thank you to you women who are truly the pioneers of, we haven't done enough to increase women in the trades, but the stories I've heard from 30 years ago and 40 years ago, things have improved slightly. We just need to, if it's not for your faces, though, we wouldn't even have the example of what's possible. So thank you for all your hard work.
Let me just add, too, that the unions we have a horse in this race. We have an unprecedented amount of people retiring, and we have to replace those. So women.
I think you've all brought some really good points, and I'm always reminded, one of the speakers talked about that you need to know math. My husband is also in the trades, and he's with IBW now, and he always reminds me, what people don't understand is that there's very smart people in this industry, because you have to know math, not with the calculator, but from the top of your head and your brain. So I feel very honored to have met some of the trailblazers here who are in an industry that is non-traditional for women. So continue your good work. And for everyone that has come here, we really do appreciate the fact that you've shared your stories. You've given us a lot of information that will be helpful for us as we continue to move forward and shape this topic for women of color and women in general. With that, thank you. And now I will open it up for public comment. And as soon as the speakers exit, I will ask you to line up by the microphone, and we'll have you come up to the table one by one to give your public comments. Or is that easier? That's fine. And you will each have 1 minute to speak, and I will be timing you on this one. Thank you so much. This is not the first and only time we'll have an opportunity to share your comments. You can also submit your written comments to the sergeant. State your name and...
My name is Beryl Schwartz, and I'm a union journeyman carpenter. After 22 years, I just retired in December, and I'm also a tradeswoman advocate. I live in Southern California, and Senator Jackson is my senator, and I'm so excited about that. I want to say Senate Bill 342, which was signed last year, states in part that workforce investment programs shall help in, quote-unquote, filling critical labor market skills gaps. We have the ability to address this while also addressing the issue of women and children who live in poverty. Labor unions offer one of the only opportunities for us to theoretically receive equal pay for equal work. And I say theoretical because women are generally last hired and first fired in the trades. While we receive the same hourly rate as our male counterparts, the average hours worked tend to be lower, thereby reducing our income. With construction currently increasing, it would behoove us to recognize that A, we have a serious shortage of construction workers, and B, women make up around 51% of our population. If the state acknowledges this statement in the bill as true and truly wants to address it, we need to look no farther than the simple and affordable solution of bringing more women into apprenticeship programs and helping to ensure their retention.
Thank you for, if you can wrap it up, please.
Yes,
thank you.
I just want to say it's a win for unions and contractors by increasing their workforce. It's a win for women by helping them get high-paying jobs that help lift them out of poverty. And it's a win for the state as more people are working at higher wages, thereby putting more dollars back into the economy.
Thank you so much. Next speaker.
Hola, hermanos, hello, sisters and brothers. I'm Shelby Janes, representing a think tank called Sound Ideas, and I have a degree in management and administration. The women on our staff have directed me to start by saying, please answer what will be done to avoid any good works you do from going into the inactive file. Thank you for your kind response to that, because in the Assembly Daily file dated a week ago today, Tuesday, January 12th, we see on page 145 a hard-working Assemblyman named Holden had 4 bills that he had to put into the dumpster by making a motion to put inactive. Next page, 6 bills. Democracy is a messy business, right? Somebody's got to do it. I was going to have a little interlude here, but I don't know if my 60 seconds... Oh, yeah, did I have an answer from you? Yeah, let's listen to what they have to say.
So thank you for your comments. And hopefully what happens is it doesn't go in the inactive. What we're doing is we're gathering the data so that it gives us the ability to create policy that hopefully the governor will sign. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Have I exceeded my 1 minute?
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Lori Furstenfeld, and I'm a staff attorney at the Child Care Law Center. We'd like to thank you for including in the discussion how the low wages of child care providers and the parent consumers are a big part of addressing the poverty issue in California. As Tanya highlighted, research shows that the most important predictor of quality childcare is staff wages. With higher wages, higher qualified childcare providers are attracted to the field and stay in the field. They are able to provide high-quality childcare, provide for their own families, and stay off public assistance themselves. High-quality childcare translates to greater educational achievement for children, lower rates of grade retention and participation in special education, higher earnings for these children when they grow older, increased likelihood of college completion, better health, lower rates of incarceration, and lower rates of public assistance. The benefits definitely outweigh the costs. Research also shows how the stress of poverty affects children in the home and with their caregivers. Elevated stress thwarts a child's ability to learn, retain information, delays development, and compromises their immune systems. So what do we do to address this problem? We really need to advocate hard this year for increased child care rates and to increase the minimum wage for the parent consumers and the eligibility requirements for parents, and make sure that parents who qualify for child care can stay in childcare and climb out of poverty have a realistic opportunity to do that with 12-month eligibility. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment, and thank you to all the participants that came to this hearing. I want to thank the Assembly Select Committee on Women in the Workplace and the Legislative Women Caucus and the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls for participating. And I'm hoping that my 2 co-chairs or 3 co-chairs will continue to move forward with us as we continue to dive into this issue in depth to create policy, as I stated earlier, that will not sit on a shelf, but that will give anyone that continues to move the agenda for women and girls of color in the Assembly as well in the Senate to eventually go to the governor's desk to get signed into law. Thank you for the opportunity to address this. And then if I can just have staff raise their hand, and let's give a round of applause for them putting this all together with their infrastructure. Thank you.